So great to see you. Hi, it's Deborah, and excited to spend a little time with you on an almost weekly basis here on both Facebook and Zoom. And, I want to start off today by talking about a couple kinds of trauma that chances are you've had happen to you as well as me and as well as most of us by the time we're over 30, right? It's pretty hard to escape trauma. It's virtually impossible. So the question is not how to skip it, but how to deal with it, And I have lots of coping mechanisms I can recommend. So let's start off by talking about PTSD, which you may think is just something that happens to people, in Afghanistan or Iraq, but really you may very well have it or have had it. You can get it from a car accident. You can get it from a brutal divorce. There's so many things that can pull you up and away from the earth and disconnect you from your base chakra and make you fairly wacko. I'll tell you my first experience with it that I recall, but with that proviso, let me back up and admit that I had such a violent childhood. I probably had PTSD in the womb. Lots of violence in the womb and as a small child. So I was no stranger to it, but I really remember it most vividly when my husband and I together had a very bad mountain climbing accident. We were young marrieds and we were avid mountain climbers, and stupidly, we always used to climb alone. Our friends all thought we were crazy and we thought we were immortal. You know how it is. And so we were out there climbing that day and a couple of things went wrong and he fell 50 feet below me. I saw it. The rock face curved in, and so for a few seconds I didn't see him as he fell below me, and then the rock face curved out and bang, I saw him hit the ground. 50 feet, of course, is supposed to kill you. He didn't move. I was pretty sure he was dead. I was stuck up on the mountain. I couldn't disentangle myself from what had happened. I should have fallen too, but I kind of got caught in the ropes. And the ropes are meant there as a backup, but you're not hanging from them. They're not supporting you. And in this particular instance, I kind of just got kind of caught in them. Of course, we were alone. Again, very stupid, not safe. I started screaming. I didn't know what else to do. And I screamed for 3 or 4 hours until finally someone down climbing on the backside heard me. And that team of 2 men came running around to the base of the cliff I was on, saw me up there. I said, get an ambulance, don't worry about me. And they went all the way out, which is a couple hours, and called actually for a helicopter, and came back, and it was nightfall. And they had to figure not only how to get my husband out, but how to get me down. And it was extremely dangerous for them too, because the whole thing could have just gone down. So I've always been one of those everything's fine people, and I made it through the next few weeks of being in the hospital at his side and trying to make a living, because another stupid thing you do when you're young, we had not bothered with health insurance, thinking we were not only immortal but extremely healthy, and I had all these medical bills. He had all of these high-tech professionals, cranial surgeons, and the whole thing was very expensive. And I remember thinking back now, I saw a couple of red flags for me personally during that time period. I was trying to close a big transaction I was handling and take care of him. And I remember I wasn't eating or sleeping, a couple of red flags. And then about 2 weeks after the accident, I suddenly woke up the next morning with a speech impediment. Classic sign actually of PTSD, one of hundreds of classic signs. I didn't know that. I just knew that as a young lawyer, I no longer could count on opening my mouth and speech coming out. All of a sudden I would open my mouth and you'd get that. Pretty embarrassing in a meeting or in court. I couldn't talk. It didn't dawn on me to get help. you know, one didn't get help back then. One didn't even know about PTSD. It was unheard of. And I just limped along. I literally, you know, toughened up and just kept limping. So, of course, now I'm very trained in working with people with PTSD. You know, it has no borders. It has no boundaries. It could come to you from a natural disaster. Hey, I was in a fire just a few months ago that re-triggered my PTSD. I could feel it. I was madly trying to evacuate, and I was one of the last in the neighborhood to leave, which was dumb. I just didn't quite have my act together. It is the middle of the night, and I was alone, so I wasn't moving as quick as I wish I had. And trying to actually drive out was startling. You know, there was all the ash and the embers and the smoke, and I was driving an unfamiliar vehicle, and it was, you know, dark, and I was in my pajamas. And I noticed for like a week or two after, I wasn't quite plugged in. So that's what PTSD does. It, you know, it kind of unplugs you from the ground, unplugs you from your base chakra. Other classic causes of it, maybe you've been assaulted, or you know, can come from just about anywhere. Don't assume that the event you had is too embarrassingly small to qualify as post-traumatic stress disorder. Assume that if you felt really deranged by an event, that you have a bit of it and that you should work on it. You should really work on it. Don't let it cascade into heavier symptoms like I did, and, you know, ended up with a speech impediment. If you have disturbing memories about something, you know, that was stressful, you really should tackle it. You really should. Don't avoid life because of you know, memories. Instead, get help. Get the memories worked on. Don't spiral into anxiety and depression and overeating. Hey, and either oversleeping or not sleeping. All those things are signs that your energy field, your psyche, could not cope with that event and needs support. So I want to do a short meditation right now, right this minute, to give you an idea of how to cope. So, you know, scientific studies have absolutely proven, if you need science, I'll give you some, they've absolutely proven that, you know, mindfulness kind of activities like meditation are very beneficial for recovering from a really stressful event. A loving kindness meditation, all the sorts of things I teach are very, very beneficial for removing this kind of memory from your psyche and your energy field where you've stored it. So these events, you store them in your body and in your energy field, and there is a way to remove them. So right now, let's just do it. If you're driving, you're welcome to do this. Just keep your eyes open. If you're not, you might want to close your eyes right now and take a couple of deep breaths. We're just going to all relax together. We breathe in. We breathe out. And just take another deep breath. We breathe in and out. And we're just kind of relaxing. We could even say, for example, so hum. We could breathe in with so and out with hum. And so and hum. We're just dropping our base chakra while we're doing this, and we're kind of connecting to Mother Earth, this source of all of our sanity, all of our connectedness, all of our safety for our body. So if you've had a trauma, a traumatic event, what it's done to you is made you feel unsafe. And when you feel unsafe, oddly enough, we disconnect from the earth, which makes us feel a lot more unsafe. So what I'm helping you do is reconnect. We're just reconnecting. It's so easy. And I want you to say to yourself with me, I am all that is. Let's say that together. I am all that is. Just feel how safe you feel right now. Just really drop into that and feel the core of it, that you're whole, that you're healed, and that you are the love of the universe. And, you know, just join with me in thinking of how grateful you are for all of your experiences, even the stressful ones, even the scary ones, even the traumatic ones, because you grew so much from these experiences, from that vicious divorce or huge family breakup, from trauma at work, or from a natural disaster, maybe like you, a fire, a flood, an earthquake, freezing cold that's going on the East Coast right now could throw someone into PTSD if they got caught outside, or if their car wasn't running and they were trapped in it. So don't think that the event that you're ashamed to think was stressful. It was stressful if your body thought it was. So now take your focus of your breath to your heart, to right in the center of your chest. Take another deep breath right into it, right into your heart. Just like you're breathing in and out of your heart. Let's do that again. We breathe in and out, right at the heart, right at the heart. And just imagine that you're breathing this beautiful rose-colored light in, and breathe it out again, and just cleanse your whole lower 4 chakras that way. You're breathing in that pink light and out, and just let that light expand and cleanse you in all directions. It cleanses your whole body. Just breathing and breathing. And now send out all that love you have to the rest of your body. Let it just fill you. And it's there for you. That's all, your own. All right, so eyes back open. And I'd actually like to do another traumatic teaching, also another one on trauma, because this is, I think what so much of life is about. It's about dealing with trauma. And this time I want to talk about dealing with loss of a loved one. So I doubt there's anybody on this call with me today who hasn't lost someone or a favorite pet, which is sometimes even more devastating. It's pretty hard to get out of childhood without losing a grandparent or a beloved great aunt or a favorite pet. And so we get really banged up by this. We get traumatized. It can even go into PTSD. If it's sudden and unexpected, it totally can. You might have known the loss was coming. Again, like with my mother, my goodness, it was like I lost her over a space of about, seems like 5 years. They kept telling me any moment she was going to pass. And then that was from 85 on, and she didn't actually pass until 90. The odd thing was, although I should know better because this is the work I teach, I was so surprised to find that the real loss occurred about a month after her passing. About a month later, I realized I was just devastated. I was really surprised because here I'd had like 5 years, to prepare. But you're really left with a hole. And there's so many directions we can take then. I want you to know that this loss isn't death for you. Feels like it, but it isn't. Okay, no matter what you're grieving from, a betrayal, a divorce, a loss of a job, it can be anything, or a loss of a loved one. It's not your death. You're grieving, though, a great loss to you. And what happens is we cord the things we love in a good way. We send out energy cords from our chakras 1, 2, 3, and 4. Good cords to people we love, to jobs we love, to situations we love, to pets we love. And then when that ends, they either leave or they die. The cord suddenly comes back to us, and it's a big shock. It's a big shock. And then, you have people saying platitudes to you like, oh, he's in a better place, or everything happens for a reason. I hate that one. And, you know where I'm going with this. I'm sure that people have said things to you that you felt actually kind of hurtful. Time to pull yourself together. But it's not, because you need time to grieve. You need time to grieve. Let me reiterate that a third time. You need time to grieve, and it's your clock, not somebody else's. Just because the boss says the funeral's on Friday, we'll see you back at work on Monday, doesn't mean you're going to be functional by Monday. You might need another week. Now, beyond that, I would urge you to get back in the swing of things and back into your life to make sure you aren't spiraling down into depression or self-pity or any of the other bad places we can go, right? When we're feeling pretty sorry for ourselves. So you don't want to go there. But at the same time, give yourself enough time to properly grieve. Our society typically doesn't. Like me, you may have studied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her 5 stages of grief. Remember, she's got denial, anger, and then you go into bargaining, right? Then you go into depression, and finally you go into acceptance. So it's gone. The thing I loved, the person I loved, or the job, whatever it is, it's really gone, and you accept it. It could be, if you're older, it could be your own death that you're getting ready to grieve. That can happen too. And the important thing to remember is none of this is linear. So even though Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says it's 5 stages, you may go 1, 4, 2, 5, 3. Don't expect them to be in the right order. Also, you may go 1, 2, 3, and you're waiting for 4, and then you go back to 1 and you start all over again with denial and anger. So that can happen too. They aren't linear. They aren't in that kind of a progression. They're in the progression that your psyche can handle. And it's not uncommon for both this kind of a loss as well as for a post-traumatic stress syndrome for a triggering incident to happen long after you think you're all done with that issue. For example, Eric and my climbing accident that I talked about, 10 years later, there was an earthquake in San Francisco, and I was only watching it on television. I was hundreds, if not 1,000 miles away, watching it on television, and all of a sudden I went into all the same patterns of speech problem. I just went all the way back to the beginning and started to re-experience my own PTSD from an earthquake in another city. Just even thinking about these poor people and all the trauma and connecting to that trauma took me back to my own. So I want you to be prepared for that, because that can totally happen, where you relive through someone else's experience their trauma, and it re-triggers your trauma that is entirely dissimilar. The only thing in common is that everybody feels the same, which is disconnected to the earth, shattered, shocked. You know, I had the same feelings in my mountain climbing accident as these people did that were running down the streets in San Francisco with the buildings falling all around them. So it's the same kind of thing. You know, you're picking up on the feeling and you're re-experiencing it, and it's triggering your emotions to come up, which is a really good thing, because you don't want to suppress your feelings like ever. You want to learn socially acceptable and creative ways of expressing them, of working through them, not unacceptable ways. You can't go in the subway and start screaming. They need to be, you know, appropriate ways. It could be through yoga or meditation or counseling or you know, it's talk therapy, just about anything that will help you get in touch with how you really feel. That is the way to work your way through PTSD and loss. Same thing. That's why I brought them together today to talk about them together today, is because they're similar in energetically. Energetically, they're very similar. So I don't have a magic formula for pulling somebody out of grief. I wish I did. It's a process, and grief is vital to your humanity, as is joy. You can't experience joy if you're not allowing yourself to grieve, because people who've turned off the channel where they feel grief have also unfortunately turned off the channel where they feel love. You understand, grief and love come through the same operating system. Your operating system is, if you have a, you know, a download from spirit, you do, and that's how your emotional body works. So if you aren't open to pain and grief, you won't be open to love and joy. So get ready to feel it. When your heart's broken, it will mend. When your psyche's broken from PTSD, it can mend. It can. I want you to know it can definitely mend. It can. So the idea is to learn how to deal with these things while we're experiencing them and not turn to coping mechanisms like oversleeping, overeating, overdrinking, over prescription drugging, and depression. Those are not coping mechanisms. Those are not the way to go. So let's do another brief meditation here to talk about grief. And again, if you're driving, you want to do this with your eyes open. But if you're hanging here with me, you can sit down or walk, eyes open. But if you're sitting, feel free to close your eyes. And let's just start breathing again with the sound of Om. So we breathe in and out with Om. It's a universal sound. And let's do that again. Let's take a couple deep breaths and in and out. So I want you to breathe in and out of your heart chakra. So you just intend to. You breathe in through the heart and out through the heart. And in through the heart and out through the heart. And in through the heart and out through the heart. You know, just place your hands over your heart for a moment and just know that because you're human, you're vulnerable. Just keep breathing in and out naturally, in and out of your heart chakra. Beautiful. And take a moment and bring into your mind's eye, into your sixth chakra, a picture of a loved one who's gone. If you can't remember what great-grandfather looked like, you know, just imagine. Or a beloved pet, just any loss. And just keep breathing in and out as you send grateful thoughts to spirit for that relationship. And we're so grateful that we had that person, place, thing, or pet for that time period. Nothing's permanent. We're breathing in our heart and out of our heart. And we're just expressing gratitude for that time we had with them. And we know that, you know, with joy will come sorrow. It just happens, doesn't it? And sit for a moment and just honor your own existence. I feel you, I sense you, I honor your existence. And just make room for love and contentment to come in again. If you've had a lot of grief, maybe now's the time to let some of it go. And to do that, you just hold your hands up and you intend for the grief to come right off your hands and go right up into the sky. And you just intend that. Just send it up to the sky. Time to stop grieving. You've grieved enough for that particular happening. You've grieved enough. Just be compassionate to yourself. It's been a long time. And just let these feelings just flow through your body. And feelings are good. It's good that your body can sense how you feel. You want it to feel. You want to express your feelings in your journal and in your singing if you sing. Let your feelings express and let them just work through you, because deeper inside of you, there's a profound, profound wisdom, timeless wisdom, and really infinite love deep within you. You just need to get all of this overlay of PTSD and betrayal and horrible incidents and shocking events. Betrayal, that's a big one. I mentioned it again. And loss. Just let it all, just give it back to spirit. Just let it all go up to the clouds and up into the sky. And know that waves of trauma and grief may come back. They may come back. And if they do, you do as we're doing just now. You breathe in and out of your heart chakra. You ground yourself. You connect to Mother Earth. And then you offer the feelings back to the clouds and to the sky, to spirit. Keep your breath gentle and even. You're breathing in and out And breathing in and out. And just feel all the love you have for humanity and for everyone that you've loved, everyone that's loved you, that's moved on, all those people, places, things. Even have gratitude for that traumatic experience or experiences that you've had. You've probably had more than one. Car accident, a divorce. That's pretty common these days, huh? Just acknowledge how grateful you are for how much growth you got from that experience. Growth. Let all the negativity of it go, and we just banish that. We just let it go up, and let it go up to the sky, and let the spirit world clear it for you. All right, you can open your eyes. We're back, and we have a few minutes here. Let's take a few questions about PTSD or grief or anything that's really related. So I see Nusaiba has her hand in the air. Hi, Nusaiba. Let me bring you up here to chat on the panel. Just raise your hand if you'd like to ask me a question or chat about your own experiences. Nusaiba, do you have a camera? Let me see. Oh, there you are. It's pretty dark. I can't quite see you.
Yes, now.
There you are. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, it's so nice to see you. What city are you in?
Nice to see you too, ma'am. I'm in Istanbul, Turkey.
Istanbul. Great to see you. How can I help you?
As I was listening to you, a thought come to my mind, and when you say we have to have pain, I came across a concept in Conversations with God. I don't know if you're familiar with the book.
Mm-hmm.
And he says,
It's a great book.
Yeah. He says the highly evolved beings already know that they have already come through pain and sorrow and all of that, and so they know that they don't have to go through that to experience the good side or the nicer side of life, I can say. So you think we are reaching that stage, or we still have to experience pain to experience the opposite?
We totally have to experience pain. We're still in that part of humankind's development. We're not beyond the pain point yet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That could be the next dimension. That could very well be the next dimension. I'll tell you one thing, though, I've learned, and this is just the wisdom of age, is that the pain gets less every year.
Okay.
It does. And well, and that could be a factor of my own experience, and I've been meditating now some almost 50 years, fairly incredible period of time, is that it could be the meditation that allows me to float above the pain. Because I kind of float up here. I know the pain's down there.
Okay.
I know the loss is there, or the trauma, but I don't feel it like I used to. I'm going to, Nusaiba, I'm going to invite a few of my senior teachers on who could share their experiences. Let's see if theirs are similar to mine, but it's just not the same as the pain I felt when I was 20, 30, even 40. It's not as intense. It's not as intense. And I think that's perhaps what you're referencing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to know my stage now. Like, what do you see my stage, my energetic stage? Like,
well, I was just sitting here thinking about that, actually. Your upper chakras are quite open.
Okay.
You're 6 and 7, and I can see 8 and 9, and I think 10. So your stage is you have kind of a natural gift. It feels like for the higher chakras. You meditate, right?
Yes, I do. I do the sutra practice.
Oh, wonderful! You're doing my Be a Modern Master program.
Yes,
Awesome.
I am.
Awesome.
Yeah, sometimes I do get down to like some negative feelings, and I get caught up in it sometimes, and I just want to.
We all do. We all do. Sure, we all do. I mean, we're not saints yet. We're trying. We're trying. Yeah, don't go away, Nusaiba. Stay on the panel.
Okay.
because it's interesting you mentioned Be a Modern Master. We've just been notified by my publisher, Mind Valley, that they are relaunching Be a Modern Master. If you guys, anybody who's listening goes over to my website, deborahking.com, or my Facebook page, you can sign up for a free webinar right now that I'm hosting next Monday.
Yeah,
and
I saw it.
Yeah, no, I'd love for you to come because it's an even more in-depth look at trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be sharing a violet flame meditation there that really helps people with trauma. That's way too lengthy for this little window I have today. So yeah, I hope you can all come to it next Monday at, let me look, next Monday at 4 Eastern. Is that a good time in Turkey? What time's that in Turkey? About 11 o'clock at night? Oh, midnight. That's kind of late. Aren't you 9 hours ahead in Turkey?
Yeah, it's 12:30 a.m. now. Yeah.
1:30. Yeah, you're 11 hours ahead.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot.
Well, take a long nap if you're coming.
Sure.
But yeah, it's at 4 Eastern Monday, and I'd love everybody who's already doing the sutras to come and help answer questions for people who are curious about it and might want to take the class. I'm jazzed to be teaching it again because it's by far my favorite subject. It's done the most for me in my life. And, you know, I didn't say so a minute ago when I was talking about how I got rid of my PTSD, but I did it with the sutras. Yeah, in fact, if I could tell a story on myself, and don't hold me to not telling it again on Monday, but I was learning the sutras and I was having quite a problem. I was bouncing all over the room, just literally bouncing around the room. And the teacher took me out in the hall and told me that this was back when you had to learn it in person. There was none of this remote stuff. And the seer took me out in the hall and said, "You're just so traumatized. You have so much trauma. It's just like lifting off in waves and waves." I mean, I shook. I was just shaking like a leaf. And every year I had fewer health problems as I did the sutras. Every single year I would drop another issue like a food allergy or a phobia. I mean, I had all that stuff. You know, I was a wreck.
Wow.
It's a pretty intense program, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing very well with it, Nusaiba. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
Also,
Hey, Ellen, good to have you on.
Thank you.
I thought you'd been through a bit of trauma, plus you helped a whole lifetime of psychiatric patients who were severely traumatized.
Yes,
right?
definitely. Yes.
So Ellen's a psych nurse who's just retired, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are with your psychiatric patients in this regard with trauma.
I think meditation is one of the most important things that people can do. And
my question is, what do you think? Why are they all in a psych hospital? What's your opinion? Don't you think they just got traumatized out of their brain?
Well, some of them had trauma from when they were very young and they weren't able to process it at that age. And as they got older, they can learn how to process it better. But they have to realize that they have the trauma. Sometimes it's so stuck inside of them they don't realize it. But a lot of the patients I worked with were acting out because of the trauma that they had. You know, rather than try to work on what was going on with them, they actually acted out and made things worse for themselves, and that's how they ended up in the psych hospital.
Well, hey, I can comment on that right now.
Yeah.
I have a relative, I won't name any names, who is still somewhat sane, but who acts out on a daily basis because she's never dealt with all of her trauma. And so people can get very self-indulgent, very histrionic. You guys all know what histrionic is, right? You need to if you're going to be in this field. Ellen, can you define it for people? Histrionic behavior, or Kathy, either one of you?
To me, histrionic means just being like an actor and just embellishing everything and making
almost
it much
fake.
more bigger. Yes,
Yeah.
bigger than it really is.
Drama queen.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of the new definition of histrionic behavior, but it really, I've seen more, mainly women who were sexually assaulted, especially in childhood, who go this direction. And I know that that's this gal's issue. I can, sign on forehead telling me, but of course I can't do anything about it. I've not been invited to, asked to treat, but yeah, it's a real common, Ellen's correct, a real common reaction to trauma is to act out. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Anything else you want to say?
Well, are you talking about grief, or are you talking about trauma in general, or?
Well, any thoughts you have, because you're an expert at
Well,
this.
grief, I mean, grief, I've had my own grief, and I've learned that you really have to work on it, because you can't let that sit in your body. I had done that at one point, and
Uh-huh.
I needed to work on learning how to let go of the grief and
Mhm.
forgiving people.
Mhm.
So that really helped me. So that's what I think is one of the main things that people
Uh-huh.
can do to help move the grief along.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, great to see you, and thanks for your input, Ellen. And I
Okay,
see
thank you.
Nancy here. Hey, Nancy, what are your thoughts? You're muted, Nance.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's see. Where is it? Mute.
Here, I can unmute you from here.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I
There
can't.
you are.
Okay, great. Yeah, this great explanations of trauma. I really appreciate this, and it's so pervasive. Deborah, it is so common. So yeah, we need to talk about this. This is great.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mother was one of the histrionic people. She
Mhm.
was sexually abused as a child.
Mhm.
And that, me wanting to have a calm, safe environment, I think I was somewhat traumatized my whole childhood. And I just kind of dealt with it the best I could, but I was always that watchful, on edge, wary, it's not safe. And I've had a couple of serious like falling and like really hurting myself. And it's, of course I wasn't grounded, at the time, but it tends to re-trigger the old feelings, because like a couple of weeks ago, I fell in the neighborhood, a broken pavement, wasn't looking where I was going, and I cracked a tooth. And the worst part of it was the dentist telling me that she wanted to pull the tooth out. I went into shock.
Eek. I saw your Facebook post on that. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was, I mean,
Can you imagine?
it feels to me like it's okay. I've always had perfect teeth,
Uh-huh.
but that was worse than the physical jolt of like being punched in the mouth. And I still think I could keep the tooth. I'm researching alternatives, but that was such an ungrounding feeling. And I mean, yes, it was my fault. Maybe I need to be punished. I mean, if you believe in that stuff, and I'll still be me without the tooth, but I'm really hoping to keep it. But one of the things that's helped me, and you sort of touched on this, to deal with trauma is journaling, blogging, writing about it, and exercise, rather than just sitting and stewing and worrying. It's, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? And disasterizing about it. Just moving the energy through your body physically by moving.
That's really true. But I want to go back to your writing mention, because I always write. You guys always know when something's wrong over here, because I blog about it. Then I send it out to 500,000 people.
That's so cathartic, Deborah. I do the same thing. My audience is not as big as yours, but yeah,
your feelings are. Your feelings are.
It does. It helps me. And every once in a while, somebody says, "Oh,
I'm like, whew, got rid of that."
Yeah.
Type.
Exactly. So why keep it in my body?
Right. Oh, you don't want to keep it in your body. You want to do what an infant does without the, may I say, drama. You don't want to be, like pounding the floor and screaming. But an infant, hey, processes his or her emotions immediately. And then he's all sunny, cheery, happy, and joyful. And that's what we want. And we've been trained by our societies to suppress, and stiff upper lip like the English. What a misfortune that we've all been taught that. And some of us are so good at it.
Yeah. And one more comment about grief. My mother, who was a difficult person, died this past year, and I hadn't seen her in a while, and we didn't have a close relationship. So I didn't think it was going to hit me as hard as it did, just like you said about yourself. And for the couple of weeks afterwards, I would burst into tears over quote unquote nothing. It start coming up.
Very stressful.
Yeah.
It is. And then you start to remember, this may or may not happen to you, Nancy, but you'll start to remember good times.
Mhm.
And my mother wasn't exactly a saint.
Mhm.
Read my book. And yet all I remember now are the good times.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes, I'm getting there.
Yeah, well, I'm a few years out. My mother's about 3 years gone and yours just died.
Yeah,
basically.
I'm having more of that, but when it comes up, I can't ignore it. I just, I'm
Right, you
crying.
might as well feel it. Go
Yeah,
outside,
exactly.
look at the view and actually say, wow, look at this feeling I'm having about fill in the blank.
Right.
Just feel it. Take it into your body, feel it, and then, give it up to spirit. You've felt it now. You're done with it.
Yeah. And every time that happens, I just thank you, Mom.
Right.
Just send out
Yes.
a little-
Yes. Thank her.
yeah.
Absolutely. Good teaching, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah, for
All
everything.
right. Yeah. Lots of people here. Kathy G.
Yes.
Hi, Kathy.
Such a great subject. And, I guess my advice would be, I always thought I'm the civilian with PTSD, or I was just the average person. And we all have our trauma and our pain, and there's varying levels to it. But the worst thing we can do to ourselves during that time is try to analyze it and figure it out. The best thing you can do is just allow and to shed and to process and to forgive yourself for being in it. And letting it just flow through you. The hardest thing for me to understand at the time was that I just had to experience it, and I didn't have to understand what was actually happening to me. I just had to realize that something was working through me and moving through me, and I had to just let it move through enough until it was done moving, and I was empty of whatever it was. And for me, it was meditation. Your sutra class was unbelievable in helping me heal.
Cool.
But also, grounding and moving, and, with the sorrow, there comes joy, and with joy, there becomes sorrow. So there's always a place to look that, it actually will get better, but not trying to figure it all out while you're in it. What it is, why it is, when it's going to end.
Quit figuring.
You can't make sense of it. You just have
to be. We just have to be with it.
Be with it.
Yeah. And we still want to overanalyze it.
Yeah.
Oh, here's our friend Ruth. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Hey, Ruth. Nice to see you. Ruth from Denver.
Thank you.
Hi. And just an aside to those of you who are trying to ask me a question and are here on Zoom, just raise your hand and I'll bring you up on this panel. We have room for more. If I get it too top heavy, then everybody starts to get kind of blurry. But if just raise your hand, it's easy to do over here and I'll see it. Go ahead, Ruth. Good to see you. And I know you've had your share of grief. Haven't you had a couple of, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of husbands that have died?
2 husbands, yes. Everything that you talked about, not the falling husband, but the losses, the PTSD, the grieving, everything that you shared is just, I wish you had been around and this program had been around about 25 years ago, because I really have struggled with all of it. But
well, that's how it evolved. Is I've struggled with every single one of these things. I've decided there's only one thing that hasn't happened to me, and that's the bad divorce. I just lucked out on that one.
Right.
I've certainly experienced every other kind of loss.
But as you said,
Ruth, look how together you are.
You can come through it.
Yeah, and I'm going to just throw out a comment here. I know for a fact you have a very strong meditation program.
Yeah, for probably not quite as long as you, Deborah, but almost.
Darn near.
40 years, over 40 years, and the sutras.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I would like to add also, the mindful movement. There's a lot of research being done specifically about yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So not just exercising in a gym, but the mindfulness and the knowledge that the trauma is stored in your body at the cellular level. And so the mindfulness, they feel the relaxation can help clear that from your body. So that's also been a help for me. And what you said is so true, because at our last, I've been to many workshops and I thought I've really dealt with this and worked on it. on and on. And then during the Maui workshop, I'm sitting in the back and everything's going along really nicely. And one of the students, you brought her up, worked with her. She started talking about how a friend she had lost a friend, had recently died. And
Oh,
how
I remember this. Mm-hmm.
well, I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden my heart, and I just started sobbing. And I
Got triggered.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
thought
we
this was
talked about that earlier.
I
Mhm.
thought it was cleared, but it was a great release. So I just kept sobbing, and I could feel the pain and the loss and just leaving. So yeah, you can get through it, but it's yeah,
It's a journey, huh, Ruth?
right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
can't wait to see you again. I guess March, right?
End of
See you at
March.
the
Oh
retreat
yes,
in Ojai.
absolutely.
So for
Yeah.
those of you who are new to us, we have a high-level group of practitioners that I meet with a few times a year, and we're meeting again in March in Ojai, and Ruth's in that group. That's my level 4, level 5 Life Force Energy Healing Program. If you're curious about it, you can go read about it. It's full, but you can go check it out. Hey, Sheila, how are you? You want to share? You're muted here. Let me unmute you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Did you have a comment?
Yes. First of all, I really appreciated the exercises you did because the heart is so central as an organ, but also to who we are spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were right on target for where we need to help ourselves reconnect. I wanted to just comment on a few things others said. Talking about someone who's histrionic, all that drama, it's a turnoff. People say, "Oh, they're so shallow." Well, it's because they are. You're running away because they're running away from feeling anything deeper. They're too fearful and feel overwhelmed, and that's why all that drama is there. It's not just you they're pushing away.
It's a camouflage, yeah.
That's right. But the other thing is, I thought I would share was that someone very wise once said, as you know, I had I've lived, so I've had losses and traumas. But after my husband died, I thought, gee, I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. And after a few months, someone very wise said, you can't skip the morning. And there it came. You just can't skip the morning. But I'll leave you with a little science fun fact. Our tears contain a natural antidepressant. So they're a good thing.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
That is a new fact. That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
just notice after you
physiological reason for
feel
crying.
better?
Yeah, you do feel better. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Well, good to hear from you. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Karen, how about you? I see you down there.
Hey.
Hey.
This is an amazing topic, and it is actually bringing stuff up for me. And I love that you mentioned that there are hundreds of different ways that this can manifest in people. In my trauma, I had my son abducted by his father and to another country, and then it both just impacted us completely differently. So I developed panic attacks, and I think that panic attacks are rampant in our society right now just because people are repressing all of their emotion, and it comes up. It finds a way to come out one way or another. And then for him, I have him back now, but he's 18 and he has chronic pain. He doesn't have the blessing of the sutras. I did the Be a Modern Mastering course, and it changed my life. Doing more of your courses now, it's just I'm able to release this trauma that I have, and I'm trying to find a space so he can find his own path. But it's a very different life when you repress it to then when you're actually letting it outside of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So just wonderful topic.
Cool. Yeah. Well, great to have you share.
Yeah.
And that gives everybody an idea of a trauma they hadn't thought about. Imagine having a child abducted and taken to another country. Imagine what that would be like. That'd be pretty stressful. Yeah, Karen. Thank you. And you look like you're doing a beautiful job handling as best you can.
Yeah.
Because that's our only option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Kathy Hetwer, how about you? You have something you'd like to share?
I do. This is really timely for me. I've been working through some grief recently. I've lost 2 of my dogs within a short period of time, which was very traumatic. And because of this program, I was able to fully feel that without any guilt or shame. You know, just let the grief come in the waves. And it's okay to feel sad. I didn't have to put on a happy face. I learned not to isolate, which would have been my norm.
Your normal go-to position.
Right. You know, isolate, figure it out myself, go up into my head. But instead, I use the tools of writing and sharing, giving people the opportunity to be able to hold space for somebody in grief. And what I found was the most interesting thing about grief is the blessing within the grief that brings up all the other griefs that, you know, you haven't fully felt yet. And all the limiting beliefs around death and suffering. It's been very cathartic. I've had, you know, trauma from the sudden loss of a son to a drunk driver. You know, and I kind of just started going through all these different griefs. And the one thing that I didn't know that I carried that came up during this grief process was the grief of losing my old self. I have chronic pain, and it was the person before the chronic pain that I had not grieved and let go of. And, you know, through the grief process, I feel that I'm working through that. And
I want to talk about that for a minute. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't think many people have thought through the fact that we must grieve our lost self. And Kathy's point is just so well taken. Just everybody think about that for a minute. There's, I'm sure, an aspect of you, I can think of dozens because I'm probably a lot older than you are, of selves I used to be that I can't be anymore. And, you know, it's a fact. You must simply accept that the thing that you used to be able to do or were, you can't be anymore. And she's right. It's and I don't know what your pre-pain person was like. Was she, I don't know, doing pirouettes and cartwheels? Who was she?
my pre-pain self, you know, someone in our group, in our master's group, suggested to me that I write a eulogy.
Oh, brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, really, really a brilliant offering there. And the person that I was before thought differently. She was very quick, very, very smart, could remember so many things, but I was really up in my head. I was only thinking, very separated from the emotion of it.
Yeah, but she was fast and clever.
Fast, clever, I could remember stuff. I was great
That'd
at
be a huge loss.
Yeah, and now, well, my brain's a little slower, but I'm learning to communicate on a different level, more on an emotional level rather than just in my thinking. And,
well,
you know,
what are we replacing her with? Let's all think about that for a moment, because while we've lost that cartwheeling self, you fill in the blank for your type of cartwheeling that you used to be able to do before X happened to you, before X. You know, the new you has some special capability and gift that the old you didn't have.
very true.
Yeah, so we all need to, you know, go to the bright side here, because, I mean, haven't you ever thought back to how stupid you were at 20, but how thin? Or something of that nature, right? And now you have all this wisdom that you know that you've learned from all of these PTSD-like experiences. So many of them are really fall in that category, and we just don't acknowledge it. You wouldn't have gotten the wisdom without these losses and these experiences. Yeah.
Each one had a tremendous gift. It's a difficult process to go through. I'm not saying it's easy.
No, not at all.
The birthing of these gifts, you know, it takes a little time. You know, just like with babies.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really starting to realize that, you know, we're in a downward slide. We don't realize we are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s. We don't realize we're on a downward slide until we run out of fingers to count the losses. were like, uh-oh, I'm past 10. I don't have any more fingers to store that new thing that I just lost, that I always was, that I could always do, that before, you know, Kathy's, I could always remember everything and I was very quick or whatever. My dad, he was a remarkable fellow, really remarkable. And he was Mensa, that's that fancy schmancy IQ group. He could recite poetry for more than several hours that was all memorized. I practiced law with him. He could never have to look things up. He would never have to open the law book. I had to, you know, and I was quite a bit his junior because he didn't have me till he was nearly 50. And so we practiced law together and he never had to look up a thing. And then one day he decided he was going to quit smoking. And he did everything cold turkey. When I was a little child of 4, I remember him quitting drinking, and he quit cold turkey. Done. No support, no AA, no help, just done. So he walked in one morning and said, it was a 2-pack-a-day guy. I've quit, I'm done. And he pulled it off, except 3 or 4 months later, a friend called, the family called my mother and said to her confidentially, I just ran into your husband on the street and he's not okay. You need to have him, you need to get him some help. So my mother took him to a psychologist or psychiatrist, arranged a meeting, and the neighbor friend was right. My father was very upset because his 100% photographic memory had disappeared from the stress of quitting smoking cold turkey. He couldn't remember a thing, and he hadn't shared it with anyone, his family or his staff or anybody. He was too embarrassed about it. He didn't know what to do about it, so he was just sort of like, you know, falling apart over it. So of course the professional showed him how to keep a list like the rest of us do, right? You have to write things down like everybody else with a normal memory has to do. And he had to relearn this he must have been in his 50s at the time he quit smoking. It was too hard on his physiology and his psyche. He pulled it off, but it broke something in his mental, you know, in his brain. An example of a loss and coping with it. Deborah, how about you? I see Deborah Larson there. Oh, wow, we're right down to the wire.
Yeah, no problem. I'll make this
1 minute, Deb.
Okay, so the big theme I'm feeling throughout this whole entire show is we can either go with grief, connecting with it through fear, or we can connect with it through love and gratitude.
Absolutely.
And
Great,
same with the traumas,
great,
right?
yeah, great closing comment, Deborah. Thank you. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
to Cynthia and whoever else I didn't get to, Linda, for coming. And see you guys next week. Until then, you take care. Thanks to our panel.
Thanks, Deborah.
Bye.
Thank you.